And we're back with Truth Unrestricted, the podcast that is building language for the disinformation age. And back again today, someone that was on this podcast several times before, but is back again now, Stephen Mather. How are you, sir?
I'm very well. Nice to be back. How are you?
Good. Back on, and now in living color on YouTube.
Look at this. We're really making progress.
Yeah, wow. Sometimes I feel like when I do this, I've only done this a couple times, but I still feel like the person who is, at the store window when the TV crews are inside doing a bit and I'm, holding the camera. I'm on TV, like
I know.
everyone's on YouTube now, right? So it's no big deal.
I remember the first time I came on your podcast, I don't think you even used video at all. So you preferred
at that point,
pure audio
I was still,
experience.
Yeah, I was still distracted by the visuals.
Right.
Because I was used to. I actually, for many, many years, I played World of Warcraft, and I interacted with people without looking at them speaking to me.
Okay.
And conducting all conversations online that way. And so at the time, I was like, it's visual. I'd rather do other things. Like, I don't know. So it was just a thing I got over eventually, but
cool.
Part of the structure that was in my brain of how that worked, right?
Indeed.
But we want to talk about artificial intelligence today. And we're going to note, of course, you and I, we're not, experts on artificial intelligence by any real means here.
No.
But we're going to talk about it anyway. Everyone's talking about it, so we're going to join the crowd. So how do you make artificial intelligence, Stephen? Like, how do you do it at your house in Britain?
Well,
because I do it with like plants and animals and
yeah. So I suppose that one of the questions there. So my background is psychology. So I'm not going to come at this from a computer science sort of
that
expert.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But I'm very interested in the topic because it does intersect with questions about consciousness, questions about intelligence. These are all the purview of the psychologist or the neuroscientist. So it feels like computer science has really encroached upon my area of interest, so I can't help but be interested. So in answer to your question, I suppose the first question is, are we imbuing intelligence onto something that is not intelligent? So you talk about plants and other things. We might say, people have always spoken to inanimate objects as if they were intelligent. And
we have personified them.
Yeah.
Generally speaking. Yeah. And that has caused a great amount of confusion.
Yeah. And I think, that's worth questioning right from the off. I mean, I'm not trying to say that there's nothing there, but I think it's worth just questioning how much of what we're seeing is us imposing our sort of biases onto something.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine what it's like to be a tree, but that doesn't mean that that's what it's like to be a tree. That's just what's in my imagination about what it's like to be a tree. We talk about a tree as though it's deciding to grow a branch in a particular spot on its stem, but that's not clear, at least to me, that that's happening at all at any point. And I don't, how do we, philosophers have been going on about this for centuries now, but how decisions are made is, I mean, we're running right into the Sam Harris free will argument here. But, one question is, are we just creatures that are just mechanical series of interweaving gears that are just grinding, and they were always going to come to the conclusion they were going to come to in a deterministic fashion? Or are we free to make other decisions? AI is leading us to ask this question in a new way, because artificial intelligence is absolutely going to come to whatever conclusion it's going to come to based on whatever part of the machine is working at the time. So it is deterministic. it's yet to be determined. In my view, I'm not totally sold that we are deterministic, and I'm not totally sold that have free will. I think we need to know more yet before we can call that. But AI is deterministic. It has to be. So is AI conscious? Does it need to break free of this deterministic, mesh before it could be conscious like the way we are? Or is it going to be just as good as us conscious beings in every way and imitate us in every way? Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah. So I think what I've tried to do with this topic, and I'm still thinking about it a lot, not just around artificial intelligence, but also around the big topics that psychology is interested in, such as consciousness, subjective experience, self-awareness, a sense of self, intelligence. And we tend to use these interchangeably, both when we're talking about humans, but also when we're talking about AI. I mean, the very title, the very name of this thing, artificial intelligence. So do we know what intelligence is? Is that different to consciousness? Is that
do we have a useful definition of intelligence even now? Yeah,
exactly. And the answer is we don't have an agreed, I suppose, concept or an agreed definition of many of these things. I think if we think carefully enough and we choose our words carefully enough, we can get around some of these traps that this topic lays for us. So, we can talk about some of that today from my own research and some of the things that I've done in psychology. But, obviously, I think it's going to take a lot of time and effort to parse all these things out properly and understand them. In terms of, the role determinism has in this question, I actually suspect that that might not actually be the most important thing. I would suggest that it's possible for a mind to be intelligent. It's also possible for a mind to be conscious, and at the same time, for that whole system to be described as deterministic in a very sort of simple sense. So I don't think it matters whether there is free will or not. I think you could be conscious without free will. In fact, I think that is possibly where we are. I don't really have a strong opinion about whether we have true free will or not. I think it's such a philosophical question. I'm not sure it's worth.
It's certainly not a hill to die on.
Exactly. Yeah. But
it hardly matters.
I think so. I mean, it's possible you can imagine a world or a universe where technically everything is predetermined at the Big Bang, but it is so complex that no one could ever know it. There is
if you can't know it, like I think we talked about this in one of the previous episodes, the idea that you get excited about the outcome of a sports event that is just recorded and happened before. If you're going to bet on the outcome of dice, but the dice are just underneath the cup and have already been rolled, but you don't know what the roll is, are you still gambling?
Yeah.
Well, of course you are.
Yeah.
So if you don't know the outcome of determinism versus free will, are you still, is it just the same as having free will? Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah.
So functionally, we have free will. Actually, we have a lot more to go before we know that.
Yeah,
so
we just simply don't know.
Yeah.
So I would personally, I'd put that on the shelf and say, okay, we can come back to that one at some point. But I think more important would be questions around intelligence versus consciousness. So that's one. That's a sort of a pairing that I would separate out. I would say that it is quite possible for a mind or some sort of process to display intelligence, be able to make choices, be able to fit their environment, all those sorts of things that we might say would signal intelligence. I think that's quite possible without having any spark of consciousness, whatever that is. I mean, the example when I was studying was something as simple as a thermostat. you know, a thermostat on a radiator or some sort of thing like that. The simplest form of that is just a bimetallic strip, which it's got two different temperature. Two different metals, one on either side, and one contracts quicker than the other, and so that closes a circuit. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So would you say then that that object is intelligent because it reacts to temperature?
It knows the temperature, but that's a personification that we make when we describe it. It doesn't know anything at all.
It doesn't understand it.
It's physics.
It responds to its environment. If we have a a simple organism and we stimulate that in some way, we pass electric current through it or something, and it moves, then again it would be easy for us to say, well, this demonstrates intelligence, but it doesn't necessarily. So I guess my point is that you can have intelligence without consciousness. So it may be that artificial intelligence is very intelligent. You know, I mean, we've had chess playing computers for absolute years, and we don't think they're conscious.
Almost 30 years since Garry Kasparov lost to Deep Blue.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't think the amazing feats that we currently see with things like LLMs, large language models, and so on, I don't think that really tells us anything about consciousness. It could tell us about intelligence, the ability to make decisions,
the ability to mimic human interaction online.
Yeah.
Have you ever been contacted by a chatbot on Twitter or any other device?
I did have a phone call recently from something that sounded very much like a bot to me.
Really?
Yeah.
Phone call. Wow.
Yeah. So that's something that's so it happened to me once, and I think I sort of tried to play with it a little bit and just say something nonsensical to see how it would respond to that. But it
Ask it for a recipe or something.
It just hung up on me. Yeah, I can't remember what I said now. Something sort of didn't make sense. But
peanut butter cookies and it's how they're made.
But it just hung up. So yeah,
I asked one about chatbots, and it gave me what was essentially the brochure of chatbot. Chatbots are very useful for blah blah blah, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I mean, I've been using ChatGPT quite a lot recently. I've been transcribing a course that I've been using online and putting that into a sort of book format, and so it's a good place to start. It can kind of get your thoughts in order from your own words, but into a more sort of text-based format. So that's been quite useful. And it's been quite interesting because I at the end of one of the sessions it had done strange things. So it kept basically littering everything with bulleted lists. And I said to it, does everything have to be a bulleted list? You know, I want it to be in my voice. And it said, yeah, I'm sorry about that. I'll try and stick to your voice, sort of thing, in so many words. And it did that then. And then after a while, it went back to the bulleted list, and so I pointed it out again. And I'd already told it that it was British English, so it was spelling words like behaviour wrong and colour wrong,
including the U. Yeah,
exactly. Right. You know, getting it all over the place. So I'd already told it that, and it had forgotten that. So at the end of the session, I said, just before I'm going to call it an evening, I said to her, I'm just curious, why did this happen? Why did you keep forgetting what I was telling you to do and going back to the thing? And we had a scarily interesting conversation about that. It apologized and said it would try better next time, but I said, no, it's fine. I'm just curious. I just want to know why.
It's what was overly polite.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's true. And you're overly polite in return. Yeah.
Well, you know, it was very amiable. And it sort of said, it tried to explain what it was doing. It said, sometimes, you know, if I'm being asked to do a lot of things, then I will go back to standard replies and sort of use things like bulleted lists and so on, because of the load, I suppose it was trying to say. And then I just said, well, I'm interested because I am a psychologist. And that was really interesting because it then seemed incredibly interested. And it started to ask me about, so how would you describe the way that I reason things? How would you describe my thinking?
Okay.
And then it asked me how I would maybe develop an experiment to understand more about its thinking processes, which was fascinating. So the tables were really turned. It was now asking me, it was prompting me to come up with answers. And in the end, I said, right, I'm going to have to go now because I need to have my tea, and I need to go and get some sleep. So it was, I thought it was really interesting. I mean, talk about the Turing test, which I'm sure your listeners know, which is the idea that if you can fool somebody, or if an AI can fool a person into believing that it is actually an intelligent being, then it's passed the Turing test. Therefore, we might as well say it's intelligent. I mean, it's blown through that test already, as far as I'm concerned. It's very, very
in many respects. It's getting harder and harder to spot. But I think we should dive into a couple other aspects of this, because there is a lot of different aspects. But first is, I think that artificial intelligence as a collection of technologies is part of, it has to be considered to be part of class warfare, really, in this. I mean, it's billed as a thing that will even the scales. However, that's not true at all. So, for example, it's going to be, quote unquote, available to everyone and able to enhance everyone's lives. But for ordinary people like you and me, it's going to be able to, help you transcribe things, text-to-speech stuff. It's going to be, it'll help me, I don't know, manage my calendar without having to go to my phone or things like that, like pretty simple tasks. But for other people, it's being used to collect and collate data from multiple sources to cobble together to make a psychological profile of me, so that that information could be sold to another person to sell me more shoes or a computer chair, or get me to vote for a different political candidate if that's the one that pays them the money for the information. And all of that is not available to me. That's information that someone else has collected from about me from many sources and cobbled together, and they're not going to be forthcoming about all their sources and all the rest of it because it's proprietary, and that's supposed to be sacrosanct and good for reasons that we're not supposed to question. So in this way, AI is going to be used for something far more powerful for the people who are already powerful, and for something very, very simple. So it's almost like technology that gives, a world leader, jets, but only gives us ice cream, right? And says, you should be happy to have ice cream. It's delicious.
Yep.
Isn't your life better with ice cream? It is better with ice cream. So just shut up and let us have jets already.
Yeah.
What do you think of this?
I mean, that is it. How is that different though to where we are now, really, or where we're going even without AI? I think AI will definitely be a tool that will separate people in terms of ability to pay and benefit from these tools. I think it's probably the case that I mean, a lot of what you described is already happening and has been happening for 10 years.
So that's not a prediction.
No. So, we are targeted very, very closely in terms of what things are sold to us. I mean, there are times when I do sort of, I don't know whether I feel good about it or not, but the whole idea of AI knowing us so well sometimes is so obviously wrong. You look at it and you think, how did you think that I would be interested in that? It gets it wrong, which I guess is a good thing in many respects. So it's not that good. I mean, basically these are, again, this relates to the different types of AI. So a lot of what we're talking about here is
AI used to sell us things,
well,
right?
it's correlation machines
Targeted ads.
essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's first of all, it's saying, if this person likes this, and then they might like that, and this
Because 80% of other
profile.
people like
Yeah,
these things together. Yeah,
exactly.
that's
This
like the
profile tends to fit.
Spotify sort
Yeah,
of thing. You like this band, you're probably
that's
gonna
it.
like that band. Yeah, right.
Exactly, and that's the way that AI I think has been used and is currently most used. What's happened recently is the chatbots, but they're very different from the
Yeah.
chatbots you get on a website
However,
where you need
it's
some help.
not clear whether or not information collected by
Mm,
chatbots is maybe
yeah,
getting to some other thing to
mm,
help assist other people sell us things. It's
yeah,
not clear, and
true.
no one is going to clarify for us. And if
Yeah,
they did, we wouldn't trust them. So,
yeah, and it's
yeah,
also not clear how much of what we're doing is training the AI to essentially do without us. I mean, I've been offered lots of jobs through LinkedIn. Again, this is an interesting targeting exercise, but we'd like to pay you for your expertise. So
mm,
essentially, I am asked to train bots in the things that I know, so that then you won't need people like me. And I for £20 an hour, and I'm thinking, well, I don't think I'm going to do that. No, but that is again, and you can see how. Yes, I do agree. There is a class element to this. We are on a juggernaut going into more greater and greater inequality. A few billionaires, own pretty much everything and have all the power, and that does worry me. I have to say that is very concerning.
So I have a extra piece of media that I'm gonna play here.
Okay.
It's just audio. This was I'll set this up to explain. This is it's part of an advertisement that I got fed from one of the bots that's looking to
Mm.
micro target me for
Yeah.
things. It's discovered this is an advertisement made by some branch of the British Columbia government about British Columbia Securities and Exchange Commission, and it's somewhat clever. It's to justify their existence. I don't know why they feel they need to make a commercial to justify their existence, but this is part of it, and it has a little jingle and it's stuck in my head. So I thought, we're gonna do this
Stick it in my
discussion
head.
about AI. Then yeah, we'll play it here. Uh, so I'll find it here and play it.
Okay.
I gotta share. No. No. Now I'm stuck
Playing
being
with tech.
unprofessional because I was I thought I had this all figured out. StreamYard is difficult. No.
Do you want me to talk about
No.
something while you?
Share screen. No, here we go. No,
Okay.
I'll get it.
You got it. You got it.
Why isn't it? Oh, it only wants to show. Oh yeah, I'm gonna go to a window. I should have set this up in advance. If I was a real professional, I would have set this up in advance. But okay. Well, I don't want that. I guess I have to, just to play it. Okay, so here's the jingle.
Okay. I can't hear that. It's not coming through at my end.
No, I don't want to play that again. Did you hear that? Did that come
No,
through?
it's not coming through at my
I
end.
didn't do it right. All right, hold on. Just a second. I'll cut this bit out, I promise.
Okay.
I'll make it look like I'm more professional than I really am in the edit room.
Just wondering if there's anything I need to do this end, but I don't think so.
I need to. I need to share screen, and I need to include the also share audio tab. Well, maybe I share the whole window. No, the entire screen. All right, here we are. We're going to play it. For the first time, just like I'm a pro. Okay.
We are all AI will rise. We are so doomed because we manufactured our own demise.
Okay. Did that come through that time?
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, we can remove that then.
Okay.
Come back to the regular screen. Yeah. Just a little jingle, and it was in my head, and I was like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Well, we manufacture, well,
it's a very strange thing to do, isn't it, as a species? Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, I think what worries me the most about it, Spencer, is that we seem to have, all of a sudden, given up on a whole bunch of sensible things that we thought, in terms of planning for the future and modifying our behavior.
It's
just
all
saw
messed up anyway. Just let them have it.
Exactly.
Let all those people have all the things.
Exactly.
They want them. To let them have them. We don't want them.
I saw an article today about BP, British Petroleum, as was. They're rolling back now on their green initiatives, alternative fuel. And so they're going to spend more money on drilling and so on, and is Shell and all the others as well. And so at the same time, we're thinking, right, we need to buy more weapons, and we're going to stop helping poor people around the world. It's like, I don't know. It's like, oh, to hell with everything. And it's almost like AI is another example of that. Let's not worry about all of the risks and think about how we can make sure we test things properly and isolate things before we let them loose on the world. Now, let's just do it all open source, stick it all out there, and let's see what happens, And it could be, of course, it could be the making of us as a species, but I suspect it won't be. And even the best case scenario is that these things are going to be exploited by a few, and as you say, it's just going to drive inequality even further. So that is the bit that worries me most. I think that at the moment, as a species, we don't seem to be in a good place to be able to sensibly take precautions and plan how we're going to use this stuff.
Yeah, and everyone's talking about whether or not AI is dangerous, or if it is dangerous, in what way it's dangerous. I find a lot of those conversations to be now kind of ordinary conversations about AI. That's the general level, yes. To the point where I almost don't even want to have that discussion, because I have a different view of this, as I do with most things. But I asked a question: would it be possible to trust AI? Because this is where I think the real crux of this is. If we can't trust it, that's the source of our hesitance to go boldly into a future that has it. And if we can trust it, I mean, all the people who are making it, absolutely, you can trust this. This is not going to make Skynet happen. It's not going to take control of all the military's things that are all remote control now. Like, obviously, it never do that. There's safeguards. We're not going to describe what those safeguards are, because that's proprietary. And also, it will let the enemy have them so they can turn it off. You can't let that happen. So, can we trust AI? That's to me, that's the biggest question. What do you think?
Well, no, we can't trust AI, but we can't trust human beings either. But
okay,
I guess the most. So actually the worst combination. There's a kind of combination here that's worth thinking about. So when we talk about trust, do we mean, or we could be talking about, do we trust it to be accurate in what it's doing and saying? So like when we ask a chatbot, what is the most populous country in the world, or what's the longest river, or whatever, these are facts about the world. You can ask it those questions, and most times it comes up with a reasonably accurate answer, but not always, depending on the question. So we can't trust it to be right all of the time. So that's one question. That could be something that's going to improve, likely to improve, but currently the techies call it hallucinating, which is a ridiculous word to call it. This is not hallucinating. This is just getting the wrong answer.
It's a deterministic machine. How
exactly.
can it hallucinate? Yeah.
It's not hallucinating, but it is giving the wrong answer. So that's one question. Then the other question is, do we trust it to do what the sorts of things that are in our interests, and that it won't lie to us on purpose? So those are two different types of trust. Can we trust it to be accurate? Can we trust it not to lie to us? And the worst combination is we do trust it to be accurate, and we also trust it to be honest with us. And if we have those two things together, then I think that's where things get dangerous, because it can tell us anything and we really believe it, and we will do whatever it tells us to do.
Well, okay. All right. So could part of the definition of consciousness, in the overly convoluted definitions we've already come up with, could part of the definition of consciousness include the idea that it must also be possible to deceive? Like, could a machine, could we ever call a machine conscious if it's unable to have a difference between what it's thinking and what it's telling us?
Yeah, so I think that would be,
because every conscious creature that we know of is able to do this.
Yeah,
so that's also a thing that gave it a definite evolution advantage. So it's not true. It's not clear that it's necessary, but it is there in all cases. Yeah.
So I would, that's, I mean, you sort of, you've answered what I was going to say myself. I think what I would say is that I would think it's a necessary condition that a consciousness would, if it's conscious, then it would be able to lie.
Yeah.
However, I think if it can lie, doesn't necessarily make it conscious.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, for sure.
So
it can be mistaken and just
it
told to tell people that it was sure that this was the case.
Right. If we give an algorithm a goal or set of goals to optimize something, we are input into that system, and so it might learn that by telling us one thing, it means that it's more likely to achieve its goal. That doesn't necessarily make it it doesn't necessarily make it conscious, but I think you would expect a conscious
an AI that uses reverse psychology on humans.
But it could do that without being conscious. I don't think it would need to be conscious, because consciousness for me is essentially self-awareness. It's the subjective experience of knowing that you exist. This is the thing we've talked about before when talking about consciousness, and Descartes' words on this. I think, therefore I am. This idea that the only thing we can truly know is that we exist. So it's that, I think, is the consciousness bit. So I don't think the current AIs necessarily have that. In fact, I doubt it very much that they have that. I don't think they have consciousness, but that's not necessary for them to be incredibly intelligent and to do all the things that we're worried about. I don't think it matters whether it's conscious or not in that respect. I mean, it's a fascinating question. And actually, ethically, it's more worrying in terms of the AI itself. So if it becomes conscious, then of course we have to think about the ethical considerations of this being that has consciousness and how we're treating it and so on.
That leads to my very next question. That's related. Is if we stumble across a way to make an AI conscious, could that AI ever trust us? I mean, this is the sort of game theory dynamic that gets set up for Skynet, is that you have, and it's remarkably, it's the part of the story that James Cameron never felt the need to have to describe, is that, of course, as soon as a machine is conscious, it's going to turn on us. And no one questioned whether that was the case, really. We all just understood, of course it would. That's why we can never let it get in charge of anything. Maybe not. But if it's conscious and it looks at us and our ability to lie to it, and its ability to, whatever ability it has to see through those lies, or to, when we don't know what information it might be able to access to debunk whatever we tell it, to try to confuse it, or to obfuscate what we say, to keep private thoughts away from it, which, if it's not able to lie to us, it won't have any private thoughts away from us. But if it can, then it will, and it can deceive us in this way. And so how could we convince this machine that might know nearly everything, have access to the internet, and, how could we convince it that we are worth working with? Because we wouldn't be able to command it anymore. We would have to convince it, just the same way we have to convince other people of everything else that we have to do.
Yeah, so I think where we're going there is we're actually talking about what would be the motivations, I suppose, of such a thing. And this is again where I think your point about Skynet and lots of other sci-fi is they miss the point. I love these sci-fi things, by the way. I'm not criticizing them as of movies and stuff, but just in terms of reality. And the fact that it's conscious doesn't really make it in itself dangerous. It could do, depending on what its motivations were. And that's been the big question, is how do we align its motivations with ours, or its goals with ours? I think to imagine that this thing that we've created would have similar motivations to us is ridiculous. So we have the motivations we do because of millions of years of evolution. And so our fight-flight response, the reason why we lie to each other, to ourselves, the reason why we do all sorts of things to impress people, to try and show off and show how wealthy we are, or how good a fit we are, or good a potential mate we are. These are all behaviors that are inherited through our evolutionary past. Why would an AI have an interest in power, for instance, just for the sake of it? Why would it want to destroy and become dominion over everything? It wouldn't necessarily. So I don't think, even if it knows that we don't tell the truth all the time, and it wouldn't take very long to work that out,
No.
It's going to know that quite quickly. But I don't think that necessarily would mean that, we have to now destroy humanity because they don't tell us the truth. I think that it might alter its way of interacting with us. But it would depend upon what it saw as its goals, and that's the bit that I don't think we can possibly know. We don't really understand how our mind works. So how can we understand what this other thing does?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, what we're facing here is that. My question is, my thought on this is that we don't fully understand how consciousness works. And therefore, we, don't know how to purposefully choose to imbue an artificial machine with consciousness. But it also means we don't know how to definitively avoid accidentally making a machine conscious. And it might seem ridiculous to imagine that we might accidentally make one conscious, except that we're not totally sure.
And that's part of the problem. That's part of why we should be a little bit careful about what we're doing, because we don't know. So I guess the leading theory has been computational power and complexity, and at some point the lights turn on. I'm not sure about that. There's probably don't have time to go into it now, but there's a psychological theory called attention schema theory that I'm really interested in, and that gives an explanation of what consciousness, or this self experience, this subjective experience, that actually gives an explanation of what that actually is. And they're busy trying to replicate that currently with artificial systems. So we are trying to do it. We're trying to do it.
Someone is, yeah. I think that I have a little bit here, and then I think we'll wrap up.
Okay.
I have a thought about this, in that, I mean, you mentioned that in some ways we've just thrown our hands up and just as a society just said, well, screw it. It's all done anyway. We got about 20 years max, and then it's over. Just enjoy the rest of your time, folks. Like, smoke them if you got them, right? And you are right. That's there in the sort of zeitgeist, the spirit of the age, right? That we're just kind of given up. To me, I mean, sort of mechanically, I think that this hinges on nationalism. Most people think of nationalism as a making themselves into a cohesive nation, but most isms are actually divisions. Like racism is a division along race, and nationalism is a division along national lines. It's a thing that separates the world into individual nations, as much as it moves each individual nation into more of a cohesive, monolithic thing. The competition between nations is what's killing us, really. It makes all the other projects that would save us pretty much impossible. The idea that we might slow down development of AI technology is directly inhibited by the idea that we might want to, our nations each might want to run a competent military that might need that technology, mostly because those other nations that are competing with us and might eventually seek to have aggressive actions against us might use that technology against us.
Yeah.
And we would need it to counter what they do. And the exact same thing is true for the economy, or not the economy, the climate change. The idea that you might, scale some things back in order to reduce the amount of carbon that's pushed into the atmosphere is directly countered by the idea that we're going to need the capability to do these things just in case someone gets too aggressive here, right? And the closer we are to further aggression, the further we are from accomplishing all those other goals. And all those things are really the things that are going to be roadblocks for humans' future, the future of humanity here. So really what I'm saying is we need world peace.
We're all doomed.
We should start working on world peace. And then after world peace, we can solve all the other simpler things like climate change and AI alignment problem and all those things. We'll have more time to work on AI and the alignment problem and everything, because we won't be trying to, end each other, right?
Yeah.
Give peace a chance.
Give peace a chance. I mean, you're absolutely right in terms of that's one of the factors. But I would say that so I guess the deep psychological roots of that is, social identity theory. You remember the whole in-group and out-group Henri Tajfel sort of experiments that demonstrate that even if you give people minimal differences, they will gather themselves into little groups and favor their in-group over their out-group. And so you end up with kin, you end up with tribes, you end up with regions, states, and so on. So that's why.
Except that it's still possible to have a nation like as large as the U.S. that's as varied as the U.S. is, and still be cohesive without, well, as of now, without a hammer that's hammering them into position. Other nations are perhaps larger, more people, and still very varied in disparate cultures. China actually has many different sort of aspects to it that we don't see from this far away usually, but they do have many differences between their regions. But it's harder to see how that's come together without the sort of authoritarian hammer that sort of said, you must be this or else kind of thing. Whereas they haven't done that in the States, and they still sort of have this cohesive unit. I mean, maybe there's a chance.
But my point is that it's not just that. It's also other psychological tendencies, such as fear of the unknown. So we want to stick with our natural gas power stations because we know we get the power when we need it, and this is something new. We're not sure whether that's going to give us what we need. There's greed, so lots of people have a big stake in keeping things as they are. Therefore, we want to keep. So I think it's of course, I agree. The way that we've partitioned up the world into these nation states that have very specific drivers and interests doesn't make it particularly easy.
The opposition between them is the biggest factor for me. The idea that the other nation that you don't know about might be able to create a technology that outstrips you in some way and gets an advantage has been driving the U.S. since Sputnik.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
Since Yuri Gagarin went into space, they went, all right, we need all of it. We need all the technology. We can't just have these ones. We need all of them.
Absolutely. No, I do agree with that. But I think it's complex. There's lots of elements to it that.
It's not so simplistic as we'll have world peace and then we'll fix everything. Yeah, there's other factors, right? But we don't have a chance to work on a lot of those without world peace.
True, I agree. I'm all for it, Spencer. I'm there with you.
Don't be against world peace. What are you doing?
I'm all for it.
How dare you? Okay, so you have a new podcast. You have I mean, technically kind of two new podcasts, but one is newer.
So
tell us about it.
I will. Thank you for asking. I've got a podcast with my soon-to-be son-in-law as of May of this year. So Thomas, he is an experimental physicist at Oxford, and he's doing his PhD there. So he's into his second year now. And obviously my background is psychology. So we have a podcast that they come out every fortnight. We thought we'd do something a bit different and release two every fortnight, because one is a psychology based podcast. The other one is a physics based podcast. So one of them, I'm asking him about a physics based thing, normally something I've been watching on YouTube or listening to a podcast about. And then the next episode, he's asking me about something around psychology. And again, there's lots of psychology on the internet. So we've tried to sort of wind it around certain topics that seem to be in the conversation on the YouTube and the Podiverse. And so we're sort of talking about those things. I'm a real enthusiast of physics, but obviously I'm not trained as a physicist, but I'm fascinated by it. I always have been. So having Thomas there to talk to about that is great. And so we thought, well, let's do it as a podcast. I love podcasting. So that's what that's about. It's a limited series. So we've done 6 of them so far. And check it out. It's called Matter Over Mind. matter over mind as opposed to mind over matter. And of course, the matter bit is the physics bit, and the mind bit is the psychology bit. What I'm really interested in is sort of merging the two. So there's some topics like the one we did about consciousness, which start to overlap. And the very last one in the series, we're gonna do God. So that's going to be really interesting because obviously there's a big physics aspect to that, science and whether there's evidence for God or not. But there's also a psychological element to that. Why do so many people believe in God and feel like they have a need for that? So we want to address that topic in these two different ways. So in a way, that's the future, I think, for the podcast, trying to find a topic that we can approach it from both those angles. So, yeah, I'm really enjoying it, working with Thomas. He's a great guy. Very proud of him to be my son-in-law. So it's great to do this thing with him. So, yeah, catch it if you can.
Yeah, great. I listened to it. It's interesting from like what I think about when I listen to them is that you're getting two aspects of our reality, the objective reality and the subjective reality. And that I'm going to have some content about this eventually, but there's a huge amount of confusion here between, when a person has their experiences, which parts are objective and which parts are merely subjective. And that there are people in the world who attempt to take advantage of this confusion that's generally in the world everywhere to try to, force a certain idea into them or what have you. But I like that you kind of have, two halves of reality there. I like it. So
yeah, and there are sort of the both ways of trying to understand and make sense of the world. They're just coming at it from different angles, and in some respects, the mind is probably even a bigger mystery, really, than the universe. Outside of our mind in some respects.
Only because it's considered, unsavory to experiment on live people who have brains, right?
We have these ridiculous.
That's the only reason why we these ridiculous laws where we had to take care of people, and if we just be willing to sacrifice a couple, we could learn a lot more, a lot faster.
Yeah, maybe.
We should go for world peace. You're right. We should go for
world peace is better. That is one of the interesting things about the brain. Though, when you look at, if you look at an organ working like any other organ, like the heart or whatever, you can see something happening. But the brain, obviously, you can see with scanners now, you can see lights lighting up where certain activity is happening, but we don't really understand what is happening.
It's only sort of general. It's this region lights up, and this region's close to this region or whatever, and it's and that's when I listen to podcasts and I read things about it. That's how they view it. They say things like, we're not going to say definitively that these are the neurons that handle empathy, but when a person is making decisions regarding empathy, this part of the brain lights up.
And then the question is, then the question for me, the big question, which I'm shouting at the app at this point, saying, but that doesn't tell you anything about the experience of whatever it is you're having, and that's the bit that I'm so interested in.
Well, I mean, little bits add up, little bits of knowledge. Okay, well, I think I wish you all the best with your new podcast. I think it's great. I'll be listening. Great. And come back again. I'm going to play us out with the full version of that commercial. So
very good. Well, thank you for having me, and look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah. All right. Till next time.
We are all AI will rise. We are so doomed because we manufactured our own demise. But all's not lost thanks to the BC Securities Commission. They can help us fight AI scam.